Welcome to the Birdbox.Film Club in partnership with us, myself, Presh, and my co-host, Avisha, the Big Picture Film Club. In this month's installment of the Birdbox.Film Club panel discussions, we want to tackle the subject of diversity in media and get to the root of whether change is finally happening and discuss what more can and needs to happen to push things forward and to ensure everyone has a voice. Just a few housekeeping rules. If you have any questions, please leave them in the Q&A box and we'll do our very, very best to get to them at the end of the Q&A segment.
Lovely. So let's start off with Goldfinch's First Flight Short Film Fund. It allows emerging talent from around the world to test their ideas before embarking on a feature film. Grants of up to £7,000 are available towards the production costs of all scripted genres and documentary short film content, and submissions are now open at www.first-flights.com. So we're very excited to be joined by our guest today, actor and CEO of Primetime Network, Victoria Emslie, comedian Ola Labib, director, actor, and motivational speaker, Fredi and Nwaka, and wellbeing facilitator, Leo Anna Thomas, will be joined shortly by Femi Oyeniran, actor, director, and producer, hopefully very soon. But if we just kick off and just across the board, if we can get your definition of what diversity in media means to each of you. And the floor's open for anyone.
Do you want to go, Fredi, or should I? Just to break the tension a little bit.
Ladies first.
For me personally, diversity is not just looking at a range of, genders, cultures, ethnicities. It's looking at minorities and within minority, and I believe that hasn't really been hit properly in British media. So yeah, that's my definition. Not just minorities, but minorities within minorities as well.
What she said.
Very succinct.
I was going to say.
Like that.
Yeah, I agree. I actually do agree 100%, and I do feel like within diversity, it's true. Like, it's almost like when you look at countries and so on, and issues within countries. Sometimes you have issues within the same race, within the same culture. So for me, I feel like exactly what was just said in terms of diversity, but in regards to the minorities as well, within those factions as well. So I agree.
Victoria,
Yeah.
Leah?
What both of you said, for sure. Yeah. What both of you said. I always diversity in media is like there's not enough of it, basically. And I basically I want to see reality on TV. I want to hear it on the radio. I want to see it in front of me. And it's slowly changing, but there's not enough of it, whether that's like diverse in terms of who you love, what you look like, what you believe in, and the work that I do in terms of people's mental health, regardless of any of those things, the color of your skin or who you fall in love with, you have mental health. And even that side of diversity and neurodivergent people, and there's not enough of it being seen, and we're slowly getting there. But that's the thing that comes to my mind, is it's not reality. We don't see the reality, is not enough of it yet. And it's always a tricky question to try and answer, because it's like it's difficult to answer, but at the same time easy and straightforward. It's not enough of it.
Can I also add to that as well? When people talk about diversity, they normally always thing that comes to mind is always color. It's normally color that comes to mind, but diversity is in so many shapes and forms. Obviously, color, gender, but also content. The diversity in content. We see a lot of the same old stuff on TV, film. So I think content needs to be more diverse as well. It ain't just about colors and people and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's stories, and just there's much more layers to it. Yeah.
I think like a useful thing when talking about diversity is inclusion. I think that word is much more powerful, because actually when you're talking about diversity, you are differentiating between people, and when you're talking about inclusion, it's more inclusive. And actually what we all want to see is a world and a media and an industry that is inclusive of all our voices.
And so kind of following on that point in terms of the media is what we see in film, TV, what we hear in music. Media publications have a pivotal role in sort of amplifying how that diversity or inclusion looks like or is represented. And so I guess, what do you think the media publications as a whole should be doing more of, or are doing well in how they show us these representations of diversity?
I personally don't think they're doing enough. I'm doing a lot of work more focused on the Black community. I believe there's a massive Black community that's been underrepresented in the UK. So I'm obviously Muslim, but a lot of people, purely because of my faith, would assume I'm not Black. Now, I don't like using the word Black because people would assume that if you say Black, it automatically means you're a dark-skinned person. But I'm African. Fredi has my ancestors plastered on the back of his wall, but no one would in a million years would think someone who looks like me, who has my skin tone, that has my faith, is of African background. And I feel because Muslims generally are represented as Asian in this country or as Arab in this country, little do people know that there is a 10% of the UK population is Muslim. 10% of those 10% are Black Muslims. But you don't see a lot of us on TV. So a lot of people don't put the two together. So I think, again, it goes back to what we originally said, there is a lot of underrepresentation of minorities within minorities. So people kind of generalize certain people into certain boxes because there's not enough of us portrayed in the media and on TV.
Care to chime in on that, Victoria, Leo?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think like Ola just said it. I mean, you know, there's power in representation. If we even look at Rocks by Sarah Gavron that just came out, like the power of telling those stories and seeing young women that we see everywhere around us here in London on screen was such a powerful story and message to send out, that everyone's voices should be included. Hey, Femi, in the industry. And, you know, I think not only do we have to look at who's telling these stories, but it's who's reporting on these stories. Like there needs to be more encouragement of underrepresented voices within the media. You know, the critics, who's writing about these stories. You know, I think it was Matty Diop's Atlantics at Cannes. I think she was met essentially by like a wall of white faces who were reviewing her film, and that is just, we should be doing better than that, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I mean, for me, I'm looking at the way things are at the moment. So I've just released my latest film called She's the One, and it's the first British romantic comedy with 2 Black lead actors. It's out in the US as well and in the UK, but the level of I guess promotion I got from the editorials, from the media, was really, really low compared to, I mean, most of the work I've done myself. And you would think, being that it is the first romantic comedy, I mean, with 2 Black lead actors by a person of color, you would think they'd jump on it, at least give it some kind of push. And I just found that it wasn't happening, and I had to do it all myself. And I mean, obviously it's done well, it's doing what it's doing, but I feel like they could have done a lot more, especially even the if you like the Black media. So it's not just a white or color thing, but the media in general didn't really jump on it the way I would have expected it, being one of the first, if that makes sense.
Then is there, just to kind of piggyback off this, is there an issue of like education? So the mainstream media, publications just don't know what they don't know, and so they don't know how to report on it? Or is it much more, I guess, say insidious in terms of actually they only want a type of diversity that's palatable for them?
I think it's an amalgamation of things. I think one, no matter how you look at it, media's business. So if your film is coming from a big studio, it could be about a worm and they'll promote it. But if it's an indie film, then it's where does it fit in terms of the financial structure. It's also a little bit about, like you said, lack of education, what's out there, hierarchy, because you can send out your film and your EPK and your press release to every media hub, but if there's something that's slightly bigger, it always gets pushed to the bottom. So it's a lot of things. I feel it's not any one thing. I think it's an amalgamation of all these different factors that kind of all come together and push the whole conversation of diversity right to the back. And even now, things are coming up and everyone's like, oh, it's getting better, but it's a crumb. It's not like how it's supposed to be. It's like there's a loaf of bread out there and they're giving us like a little crumb to keep people quiet in comparison. That's what I feel anyway.
Do you think, Fredi, as well, because you touched on a lot of things that I 100% agree with, do you think that they would more likely put money towards something that they're kind of comfortable with, that people have seen before? So, for example, and this is an example, if someone wanted to do a Muslim sitcom, for example, on, like jokey terrorists, or, some like a Black person that owns a Jamaican shop, and like things that the stereotypes are already out there. I feel that you see there's kind of a repetitiveness. You did mention there was repetitiveness, and the repetitiveness was based on stereotypes. But for example, if you wanted to do a black sitcom about a family of doctors, lawyers, this or that, you don't see it as often. They have a specific portrayal, because I don't think it's necessarily what Black people or people of color want to see, but it's also what they think that the general public want to see. So I think it's a matter of they tend to not want to experiment and see what else is out there. They know what people are comfortable with. They know what people have been watching for years and years and years and years, and they tend to stick to the same kind of.
It comes down to like money, doesn't it? They know what works, so they just keep remaking what works.
It's a lot of it's to do with what is safe, and even more so as we get into this era where money's a bit touch and go right now. They will want to work with what's a safe bet, and it's going to be interesting because I've got a new film that's about to come out, and I want to see what's going to happen. It's all to do with the whole racist thing, and it's about a racist man who goes to sleep white and wakes up black. And he's stuck in a black body for 72 hours with Peter Andre and Lady Leisha and a few others. So I want to see what's going to happen with that, because that's right out of the box. And I want to see where they put that. Do you know what I'm saying? In terms of how the support goes.
When's that coming out?
It's called On the Other Foot, and it's just finished. It's got Tim Faraday in it, a bunch of great actors in it. Like I said, Peter Andre's in it, Lady Leisha, and we're about to take it to market. So, we're looking for distribution at the moment. We haven't got distribution yet, but we're about to take it to market. It's a comedy, but it will be interesting to see how the world looks at it, because we talk about diversity all the time, and sometimes it's a hard conversation to have. So this film breaks it totally apart, depending on how you look at it. Yeah. So let's see where the distributors sit.
Looking
with
forward
this
to
film.
Seeing that.
Send me your details, man. I'll make sure you get a screener.
Yeah, it is a hard conversation, diversity, because it seems so like common sense and straightforward about just why are we even having this conversation, but there's a lot of history behind it, and it's like, well, there's money, like I mentioned earlier. It's like, if it works once, they'll keep remaking it. Yeah. And also there's not enough diversity at the top, who are people who are controlling this and making, like, programmers, and who are choosing what needs to work.
Actually, that's a great point, Leo, because what I wanted to ask was how we go about supporting authentic ethnic minority and the intersectionalities of these minorities in a way that goes beyond just ticking the boxes and, this will do because it's something that's tried and tested and that's all we'll put funding into. How do we go about supporting more authentic experiences play out in the media?
I think it's really hard, because it comes down to whether you're willing to take the risk or not. There are certain ethnicities or ethnic groups that no one's ever spoken about. So it's the unknown. So I think it literally all comes down to who's willing to give the chance and who's willing to take the risk.
And I also think with that as well, it's about ownership. And that's one thing I really feel strong about. owning. Once you start to own your own platforms, and you've got more of a voice, you can do more. And that's why I think it's important for. It's one thing making films, making projects and stuff like that. But once you start to own your own platforms, you start to then you have a chance to control the narrative and what comes out and what people see. So I'm all big on setting up my own studios and setting up my own production line and so on, so that I can tell the stories that I want to tell. Like, you know what I mean? I want to see people like me on TV screens, and it's nothing to do with. And for me, mine's a bit weird. I mean, I was fostered in Kent by a white family all my life, and then when I came back to my real parents, so I've seen both sides. But I grew up not seeing. I thought I was the only black person in the whole world for years. I'd never seen another black person. I thought it was just me. So it's important for especially young people of color to see people like them on the TV screens, but not always as criminals or gang members or drug dealers. It's tiring. That's why the films that I'm making and that I've made, I try to make films that don't always portray people in that same light, because we see too much of that.
I was about to say, it's important to see people just tell stories regardless of what they look like or who they're in love with, because I'm a queer woman, and when I see adverts or TV shows or you just see like there's a same-sex couple, but they don't talk about the fact that they're same-sex or their sexuality. They're just a couple. And it's like the concentration is on the fact that maybe they're having issues at work, or that or any sort of issue that we can all relate to regardless of that, and it doesn't become part of the story, if that makes sense. Isn't they like, oh, we're gay, we're having a gay wedding? It's like, no, it's just two people who are together. The story is outside of that. I like does that make sense? I see more of that. Well, it's not like you said, it's not about, like you mentioned, Freddie, about black people who are gangsters. Like, just might be black people who are in love and they've got something happening at work, or they've got family issues, or it doesn't have to be stereotypical that way. I think more of that.
I mean, that, like you said, the whole thing with, I guess, when it comes to being queer and colour and stuff, that should all be secondary. If two people love each other, the story should be about the two people that are in love, or the person's journey. That other stuff just happens to be a byproduct of the story.
But at the same time, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but at the same time, I think sometimes you have to get to the nuance of what it means to be those things. And so actually, I think I'm wary of what you guys are saying, because actually sometimes it's going into that sometimes, what's the word? I don't see color territory, which you should see color. And you should see color, you should acknowledge it if it needs to be acknowledged. Not every black film needs to be about being black. Not every film about queer people needs to be about that as an issue. But there are some projects that allow for that to happen. And so I'm very wary of we should never see, we should be colorblind. There's no such thing as colorblind. I'm wary of terms, because I just feel like actually what you end up with, and I make those street films. I'm not against them as much as everyone else is. I think there should be a diversity of content, and I've always spoken for that. I make street films, I make non-street films, and I think as a black person, I should be able to make whatever I like. And that's, I genuinely strongly believe that. And everyone that knows me and that knows the full breadth of my work knows that I've done stuff that's not street films. But the people that want to be lazy and be like, oh yeah, you only make street films, that actually you've maybe not been on my IMDb, you've maybe not been on my Instagram, you've maybe not taken in the breadth of the work that I do. But I do get, everyone's criticism about the fact that actually a lot of the black content that is created feels repetitive. A lot of the content that's created about non-middle class white people is not nuanced enough. But actually there are some bases that we need to cover first before they've not even done simple basic, like you said, Freddie, two black people falling in love yet. So let's cover that ground. Let's show black people being in love before then we move to the films about, I don't know, with more nuance than that, I don't know.
I totally agree with you, and I feel like every filmmaker should be able to make what they want to make. They're all stories, and everyone has their own their own reason or their own, I guess, their lane, what they like, what they don't like, what they don't want to tell. But I feel, like you said, I think there's so many different stories, and mine is, so long as people tell those stories well, that's my main thing. Like, it's how you represent. Do you know what I mean? How the film was represented in its storytelling. That's my main thing with a lot of films. As long as it could be, like I said, it could be about a horse, or it could be about a box. As long as it's told well, that's my thing. Tell it well and tell the story, you know what I mean, authentically. That's my thing.
100%.
I think another thing that like we need to talk about as well is like there's so many barriers to entry to work for underrepresented voices. There's barriers where, you know, entry level, mid-career, and also CEO, C-suite positions. And so like, yes, you want to tell these authentic stories, but there also has to be this entire systemic change where you see yourself represented at every single level. So you're not thrown into a situation where you are the only voice within a situation, you know, bearing the brunt of, you know, or shouldering the responsibility of having that voice for an entire community, I think is really hard. So that it has to change. It can't just be you on your own. It has to be an entire change, I think, within a sort of a system, perhaps. I don't know how everyone else thinks.
Yeah, listen, I totally agree, man. And this is the thing about the whole thing, and what I find so challenging about the whole, I guess, diverse conversation. So, for example, with Femi, with your films that I see come out, the amount of work that you guys put into your films, and the amount of, I guess, how can I put it, the quality of what you lot do, they're supposed to be so much bigger globally.
But they are. Like, this is the thing. I'm, you know, this industry thing. It's like where, or everyone in the industry is supposed to know about my films, bro. I don't care because my films find audiences. I mean, me and Nikki made The Intent independently. It went on Netflix all around the world. I'm now signed to CAA because of that. I'm now signed to Macro because of that. And like, you know, I've got relationships, loads of relationships in America, just because The Intent was on Netflix. Not even because I didn't have to do anything. No one at BFI had to introduce me to someone. Or, do you know what I mean? It was just like, I created that work. I managed to, like, myself and Nikki, let me not just say me and my team created that work. We managed to figure out a way to get it out there. And actually, in terms of the industry accolades, the industry gets behind whoever they want to get behind, and they push them through that official route. That's not my job. That's not how I got where I got to. That's not how you got where you got to, Fredi. And so ultimately, whether they catch up or not is something else. I'm not part of, like, you know, the establishment, the film establishment in that way here or in the States, but actually therein lies the gap for me. I embrace the opportunity to find gaps in the establishment's ignorance. Do you know what I mean?
No, I totally get it. But you know what it is? It's like, luckily for you and for me, but for you right now, you've got broad shoulders, bro. Because there's a million young people looking at people like yourself and me that I can speak to that are looking at, like, the achievements that you're making without the help of the mainstream and kicking off doors. And that, for me, is the beauty in all this stuff, because obviously the whole thing with the diversity conversation is blatant. So when you're getting blocked and you're getting held back, but you're still opening doors for people and you're still maintaining to be seen and you're still making content, there's a lot of young people, especially, that look at, I guess, filmmakers and producers like yourself and also myself and everyone else in the room and are looking at us like, wow, like, you managed to do it. So it's
that's what we have to, our job is to do that, right? Because
of course.
And then when the establishment comes and says, oh, we want to help you now, then they do. But ultimately, if they don't, they don't. But like,
yeah, we're still good.
No, but is that the best version of what the industry should be? No.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly
right?
that.
I'm not saying it's the way it should be, but I'm just saying, you know what, it is what it is. And like, what we shouldn't do is, like, what I never do is, like, try to get caught up on, like, oh, I should have this accolade, I should have this, I've done this. And like, I just think, you know what, it, like, people get behind who they want to get behind. I can't control that. But what I can control is what I do with my content and the quality of it, and like how I manage to release it and the impact that I'm able to achieve with it. And then, you know, before I move on to the next project and the next and the next. And you know, actually, it's, like I said, it's like finding where there's like obstacles. it's finding that small rooms for opportunity and really like, you know, using that opportunity to your advantage. And, you know, hopefully eventually someone notices. And if they don't, actually what me and you have done is move things along a little bit and shown the generation that's coming afterwards how to make content and maybe monetize them. And so they've at least figured that out, and then maybe they might get the other layer of like establishment backing later on down the line.
It's true.
So do you think it's fair to say that we should be relying on establishments like the BFI or other legacy institutions for change?
What for? What for? I've never have. Like, do you know what?
Who sets that standard of what change really does look like?
I mean, like Femi just said, you know, to be honest with you, my answer to that is like relying on them. No, it's nice, isn't it? It's nice to be acknowledged. It's nice to be recognized. It's nice if they knock on your door and be like, actually, we see what you're doing. Here's some money. But relying on them, I'm relying on myself and making sure that I do what I need to do and I'm happy doing it. Do you know what I'm saying? And anything that comes as a bonus. But I don't think we should, filmmakers, because ultimately you make film because you love the art, you love the craft, you love what you do. You tell stories because you love doing it. And the minute you start becoming reliant on other organizations to bring you that happiness, you've lost that edge.
Does anyone want to add on? No?
Yeah, I was going to say it's a tough one because like you guys, Fredi, Femi, you're lucky in the sense that you've already got that platform. So if you had like an idea in mind or you had a plan in mind, you can do it. You're kind of, I'm not saying you have a specific genre, but generally your genre appeals to a lot of people in the UK. I think the difficulty is new people that are again, within a minority that not many people have heard of. So why would any commissioner want to invest?
Can I just say one thing before you carry on?
You
said one word in there that I disagree with.
Go on.
You said lucky. Now,
okay, not lucky. Okay,
yeah, I've got to say lucky. Because I've seen Femi right from when he first started, and I know when I first started, and we have been grinding for years, like so. Where we are, I actually think, personally, I should be a lot further if the industry was different. But where we are, I feel like, I wouldn't say it's lucky. I feel like we put in...
No, I use the word lucky, blessed. You can't lie. You are blessed.
I'll have blessed. I'll take blessed. The lucky one was a bit... I'll take blessed.
I say I'm lucky in the sense that an opportunity came, and when it came and I got it. I believe everything's written. But do you know what? Let me rewind for you. Take lucky back, and I say blessed.
Blessed. So it's all the hard work, right? Building up to that point where you're able to seize the opportunity when it's there. But you've got to build up that hard work to get there to be able to
100%,
be seen and heard. Yeah.
And it is hard work, and it's really, really difficult. And I think it's harder if you are a ethnic group that is such a minority that people don't know what to do. Who are you going to appeal to? You know, who's going to watch? So it is literally a matter of if I could financially, I wrote a script and I've been pitching it for like 2 years, and only now someone's looked at it, not because they get it, it's because, oh, that's so like Sudan, where's Sudan? Oh, are you the Asians that moved into Africa? No. So it's such a strange concept. If I had the finances to do it myself, I believe that it could go far. And I think the problem is in the UK, I don't want to divert too much, but the problem in the UK, like for example, in America, my husband's African American, so they kind of, I feel they embrace diversity more than we do here. So, you know, they've got Black Muslims, Black Jews, they've got Black this, they've got Black that, they've got such a diversity of Black people, they have a better understanding. But because the UK doesn't, I think it's a lot harder for people like me and others like me to kind of break through, especially if you don't have the money for it.
Do you know what? But do you know what? It's also about, like, for me, I've always been a person, I don't do ifs. I just do hows and whens. And for me, when I first started making films, I remember when I first started my first short film, everyone said to me, you know what, Fredi, you can't do it. you're a rapper. You can't make a movie. Where you gonna get it from? And I started off with a little rubbish little camera and started making content that now I look back on it, it's cringeworthy. And then I was going into meetings at Lionsgate and all these big establishments. And literally, I went into the first meeting with them and they were telling me, oh, I like what you're doing, but let's get this person to direct it, or let's get this person to produce it, or because you're a first-time writer, and da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, okay, but if you keep on letting other people produce your content, you're always going to be a first-time writer, which means you're never going to give me any money. So literally, I believed in myself. I went and took out a mortgage. I've been mortgaging my house. I took out a loan. I made my first movie just so that I would no longer be that first-time person. And now I'm four feature films deep. I've got 2 more coming out because I took that step, leap of faith. So yes, it is hard to get money if you're going out to other people to get money, but it's about what you are prepared to do. Do you know what I mean? To make
No, I get that. No, I do get that. I do get that. It's a really hard one, I think. I do get that.
It is hard. It is hard.
I'm just going to go on to some of the audience questions and statements. It's actually quite a bit here. Valerie Lux says, what should journalists do who report about diversity issues and get shitstorms on social media afterwards? Any thoughts on
that? Say that again?
What should journalists do who report about diversity issues and get shitstorms on social media afterwards?
Yeah, but if you're a journalist, that's your job. Your job is to report, regardless, whatever you get back from it is what you get back from it. So if you're reporting on something good, bad, negative, great, whatever, your job as a journalist is to report. Do you know what I mean? You can't control what comes back from it. Do you know what I'm saying? That's your role.
I'd be kind of shitstorms regardless of it, whether it's good or bad, diversity or non-diversity. Nowadays on social media, you get shitstorms regardless. So just keep doing what you're doing, isn't it?
I was going to turn it around and be like, why is there shitstorm in the first place? It's like the responses that the public have. It's like, that doesn't need to be there. It's
Cool. Moving on swiftly. From Anonymous, progress and change is gradual. How can we do it more? Education is key, but is there anything else?
Such a big question.
I think one of the most important thing about this whole conversation, what I always say, is that they need to make it easier to enter the industry if you don't have pre-existing relationships, and that's key. And also, I just feel like there needs to be more broader leadership, diverse leadership within the industry across the board. So, like, more women, more people from different races. Like, this is the thing. Sometimes that diversity is like code for non-white. And like diversity is like, I think someone else mentioned it in the questions. It needs to be more about creating a truly diverse body of people working on stuff together, whether that's like, and that's white, that's black, that's like just the full spectrum in between. And I think that's really important that when this whole diversity conversation, when it's being had, it's not just let's give more black people and women and like LGBT people, or like get a one of them, one of each.
Yeah, it becomes like a tick boxing.
Yeah, let's just get a one of each, and and then if we find a gay black woman, then we've just done it all. And
then she's dyslexic.
Maybe happens to be disabled as well. It'll be like fantastic. And then we've ticked and when it becomes like that is when it's problematic. But when you like put a truly diverse body of people together at different companies and in sort of different on projects and in different roles, I think that's true, and that's what we should all be aiming for. I think that's really important. But the main missing thing within the industry is that actually the composition of the leadership roles at all the major broadcasters, at all the major film companies. I've been to like the majority of the distribution companies in the country. And like, I remember like there was one time we went to all the top distributors, and I think there was a black paralegal was the highest black person I found at all the companies. It might have changed now. This was like maybe about 3-4 years ago. And I think there was a black woman and she was a paralegal at one of the major distributors. But outside of that, the offices were not very diverse at all. And so I just think that's part of the problem of
Do you think tick boxing will eventually turn into, like, do you think tick boxing is the way forward in terms of this is the way forward to get people in, and then eventually people from any area? Do you reckon that? I always wonder, is it a start and therefore eventually we'll reach a time where there will be more people involved because of that
concept of I hate when people like even say tick boxing. Like when I get signed up for gigs and stuff like that, they're like, oh, Ola, you'll be perfect for this. You're a woman, you're black, you're Muslim. And I'm like, you're kind of taken away. Is it not because I'm funny?
Am I good?
I hate it too. I hate it too. But my question is, I hate it too. But my question is, that's the way the world is right now. But is that going to be working for all of our advantages that eventually it will actually break down those doors?
Advantages, so I'm not complaining too much.
But you know what I mean? So then once the people are in, regardless of whatever that tick boxing is, you're in, and then you can start building it, and then there'll be one day where
what you're talking about is affirmative action, right? Is really in short, right? And so should people be compelled to have, you know, people from diverse backgrounds on productions and in, like, you know, office and development roles? And for me, I think, yeah, to a certain extent, but actually the way it's done is kind of a little bit insidious. It's a bit weird because the way it's done, it's sneaky, because people get given these roles that are kind of nothing and really super junior with no prospect of development into leadership roles, right? Because actually my thing is that actually I think if you get diverse, like black, LGBTQ, like, you know, Muslim, whatever, right, a diverse leader at a company, right, or one as part of the leadership group, you get more diversity across the board. And that's not to say, you know, I'm working with this director at the moment and on a film, and she's like, you know what, Femi, whenever you introduce me to someone, I never know what they're gonna look like. I.e., like, I hire white people, white straight men, I'll hire, like, you know, they could be gay, like there could be a black person, but she doesn't know. She genuinely, like, oh, you know what, I've got this composer, but she genuinely doesn't know, because actually, like, the funny thing about diverse people as well, and people from, like, you know, minority groups, is that actually we've had to be accepting of a diverse world, and our world is we've got a more diverse outlook anyway. And so whenever you get one person from any of these groups, what you get is really a truly diverse body, i.e. that's not a body of people that is not a disadvantage to anyone anyway. So I think it's more powerful to get a diverse executive than to get a diverse intern.
Yeah, I agree with that. But it's becoming a problem now. Like, a lot of white male comedians are starting to say, because we're white and male, we're not going to get the same opportunities because we're not diverse. So regardless of our talent, because we don't tick diversity boxes, we're not going to get anywhere. So in the comedy world specifically, there is a lot of clapback from white.
I mean, that's inevitable. That's inevitable when you're used to having the world your own way forever, and then, like, the world is changing. And, like, if you think the world was a better place when it was only working for just you white male person, then you're part of the problem.
It's true. It's actually true, Fem. You know what? That's so true, man. And for me, it's just, you know what? It's not even rocket science for me. Mine is like, if you're good, you're good. I don't really care about the color thing, you know. Like what you just said a minute ago. The person you're working with doesn't know what to expect, right? I'm exactly the same as you. Like, you know what? If I got a lineup of 50 people, and if 49 of them happen to be black, right? But one was white, but the one white person or Asian person or whatever was more suitable to the job than the other 49, I'm going with the one that's suitable for the job. That's just how I am. Like, I'm not. It's not a color thing. I just feel like you just got to be good. And I hate this Do you know what I mean? I just hate that whole thing, man. It's just got to be what works for the job and what is the best suitable for the role or for the job. That's how I look at things anyway.
We have a question just touching on that, and they ask, has any industry or business nailed diversity? So have you guys seen, or can you share any examples where you feel like the steps towards being more diverse and inclusive have been taken on board?
I think we're a long, I'll let someone else talk. I think we're a long way away. So like you look at, take football for instance, right? There's loads of black players, right? It's a very diverse body of, like, it's a very visible industry, very diverse body of the staff, right? The people that do the manual labor, kick the ball, are diverse, right? There are no black coaches really, like, and I think there was there isn't one, I don't think, in the Premiership at the moment. I don't think there's I think QPR probably have like Les Ferdinand as part of the leadership team, and they're in the Championship, and so you look at football, you look at, for years and years you've had all these black players, but in terms of leadership, there aren't any real black people involved in the leadership. Now, are black players so inept that they don't know how to, well, or maybe they don't know how to coach? Maybe, I don't know. But like, to have like so many black players over the years, like, you know, from at least from the like 90s, there's been like, you know, a mass, and not one of them has been good enough to coach.
Yeah, it's true.
It's strange, but I mean, you've had black coach. You have Chris Horton, I think his name is, and like you've had him, and he was at Newcastle. And so I think for me, that speaks to society. It's a reflection of what I think the problem with all these industries are. But to be fair, the music industry is doing a lot in terms of diversity, in terms of like, you know, recruiting black presidents. Like, you know, my film, The Intent 2, was funded by Island Records. I like, the guy that signed it off was a guy called Darkest Beast, who's you know, Darkest House son, and like, you know, is like, and then you've got a guy, I forgot his first name, but his surname's Kentish. He was promoted to be the president of Warner Music this week, and you've got 0207 Def Jam, which is led by two brothers, Alec and Alex Boateng. So like, in a way, I feel like actually the music industry has seen the benefit of having more black talent in the building, i.e. the Stormzy, like, you know, black British music is the most streamed, it's most popular music in the country at the moment.
And they're programming, aren't they? They're changing programs for festivals.
Yeah, right. Because
I think that's as well how you change
because it. Kids are listening. Kids, the greatest thing about music industry, what I find really interesting, what has influenced the shift in the music industry more than anything, is streaming, right? So this Spotify thing comes out, this Apple Music thing comes out, and you decide what you listen to. Now, it turns out that what people are really listening to is this urban music that's sometimes coming from these kids that are making it in their bedroom, like these rap songs that kids are making in their bedroom. It's really popular. Not necessarily because the music industry pushed that program, just because that was what streaming showed us people really liked. And now, because streaming shown the industry that that was what the kids or people, whoever's listening to this music, really liked, the music industry has then gone out of their way, not only to, like, you know, try to sign a lot more of these artists and to empower them, but also at the same time, they've hired more black people into their teams and into leader and promoted black people accordingly. I can list at least 4, 5, 6 different music executives in the country that have their own labels, have their own imprints, that I know, like, that I have personal relationship. And I'm sure there's loads of others that I do not have personal relationships with. And so for me, I think that industry is doing a good job, like, not the best job still, but a better job than the film industry in the UK at the moment. I think simply because I can name 3 or 4 black presidents of labels, which is unheard of maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And then I wanted to say something else. And that's what happens when the industry almost like Spotify and those things democratize the way consumption was done, whereas before it was top down, right? So the labels decided, curated what they thought people wanted to listen to, and then spent loads of money marketing it to people, and then people might then just buy the CDs and the cassettes or whatever medium people are consuming it on. Now Spotify and those things, that streaming sort of democratized the content, so it was bottom up. And it's now, I think that's really influenced the changes that I've seen, like, you know, in the past sort of like 3-4 years within the music industry, where we've got more diverse people in leadership roles. And it's not even just black people. There's more women, there's more Asian people, and so on and so forth.
We were kind of talking.
I still think there is an issue of a diversity of black people. I really do think that's still an issue. I think there is an increased representation of black people in the UK, and I think that's fantastic. But I feel like it's only certain.
It's only West African.
So, for example, I'm African and I'm black, but my agents as well have applied for me to do black gigs, black roles, but I don't tick the box of what they think black is. So imagine most of my material is talking about people not believing me or expecting me to be black. They expect that when I open my mouth, I don't speak Nubian. They expect me to be speaking Urdu or Hindi or whatever. So I think there is an underrepresentation of certain black.
So basically, I suppose your point is that, you know, the diversity of representation of the full breadth of like what it means to be black. And that's I
definitely there is an underrepresentation of that.
Absolutely, I don't, you know, I can't dispute that. And like, but for me, like, you know, my main point was that in terms of the music industry, I've seen change in that industry in the past 2 or 3 years, which I felt has been influenced by the industry realizing what people were actually listening to rather than what they were telling people to listen to. But at the same time, you know, like whether that's like the full breadth of the black, you can never. This is the thing. That's the challenge, right? Is that it's a specificity of those experiences. What you take, for instance, right? It's like, whenever I say to a white person they're white, they get really offended because white people don't see themselves as white. They see themselves as English or British or French or Swedish or right. And so, but black people from everywhere are meant to be black.
We were saying that just a minute ago, weren't we, Fredi? At the beginning, we were talking about okay, what is, you know, like, what would you classify as black? Some people are like, oh, you know, no, I get that.
And I just feel like black is this blanket phrase that applies to all black people in the West. Whereas when I get to Lagos, I'm Yoruba. I'm not even Nigerian. I'm Yoruba.
Get me? Yeah.
It's so specific to my tribe. Like, it's because actually I can't, to Nigerians, I'm Nigerian, but before I'm Nigerian, I'm my tribe, because my tribe predates colonialism and contact with the West.
100%.
And so those tribes are more important to Africans than say like, oh, I'm Nigerian, because Nigeria was a name that was voted for in a newspaper by
it's
someone's
so true.
wife, like a famous Englishman's wife.
And you know what? I didn't know you were Yoruban. I'm Igbo.
No, but ultimately that's like, you know, and do we want them, like what you're saying is that there's another phase of diversity that needs to happen in that regard, where we get deeper into, like, you know, the full breadth of these experiences, in the same way that English people do not view themselves as the same as Italians.
I think it's safe to say there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of education, especially, and just getting people to understand the nuances and the intersectionalities of minorities and representation in media. But I'm afraid we're going to have to stop you guys there. This has been such a great discussion and possibly a first of many diversity in media panels. So thank you all for joining us.
Thanks
for
having
us. Big Picture Film Club. Be sure to follow us on social media and check out bigpicturefilmclub.com for more details for upcoming Birdbox Film Club events. Thanks everyone. Hopefully catch up with you soon.
Thank you very much. Take care, everybody.
Take care. Bye.
Bye, guys.